Good morning, everyone. Today I want to talk about a principle that is both powerful and profoundly misunderstood. Never complain, never explain. These 5 words, attributed to British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli and famously adopted by the late Queen Elizabeth II, offer a stoic approach to life that calls for strength, dignity, and quiet resolve. At first glance, it may sound cold or dismissive, but look deeper and you'll find wisdom that can help us become more resilient, more focused, and ultimately more free. We live in a world where it's become common, almost expected, to air every grievance, justify every action, and defend every opinion. Social media thrives on it. But if we constantly complain, we give away our power. If we feel the need to explain ourselves to everyone, we dilute our direction. This motto is not about emotional repression or avoiding communication. It's about mastering yourself. It's about choosing your battles and recognizing that true strength doesn't need to shout. When you complain, you're broadcasting helplessness. When you explain, you're seeking permission. But when you choose silence, intention, and calm action, you gain control. Complaining at its core is a reaction, a vocal expression of dissatisfaction with something external. While it's a natural human impulse, indulging in it regularly shapes how we see ourselves and the world. It becomes more than just venting. It becomes identity. Every time we complain, we're rehearsing a narrative where we are not in control, where circumstances, other people, or luck dictate our outcomes. When you complain, you subtly affirm that you are at the mercy of life rather than the author of your own story. You may start to believe that you have no agency, that your boss is ruining your career, the economy is killing your dreams, or other people are always letting you down. These may contain grains of truth, but the habit of complaining magnifies the problem while minimizing your capacity to act. Over time, it chips away at personal responsibility and replaces it with blame. More dangerously, chronic complaining conditions the mind to look for what's wrong rather than what's possible. The brain is wired to strengthen whatever patterns we feed it, and when we constantly focus on negativity, we start to see problems even where they don't exist. This mental filter leads to pessimism, reduced motivation, and emotional fatigue. Complaining also affects how others perceive us. People instinctively distance themselves from those who constantly find fault, but take no steps to change their situation. It drains energy, invites pity rather than respect, and rarely inspires action or admiration. Leaders, creators, and those who move the world forward don't waste time voicing what's unfair. They seek solutions, however small, and focus on what they can control. And even in the most unjust situations, there's power in how we choose to respond. Some of the most powerful figures in history, from civil rights leaders to survivors of immense hardship, endured pain and oppression without falling into cycles of empty complaining. They turned grievance into action, not by amplifying their suffering through complaint, but by channeling their energy into purpose. Complaining feels momentarily relieving, but it's a trap. It masquerades as emotional release, yet underneath, it's a reinforcement of powerlessness. The impulse to explain ourselves, our actions, our choices, our silence, often comes not from clarity, but from fear. It's a subtle form of seeking approval. When we over-explain, we're not just informing someone, we're trying to convince them that our decisions are acceptable, that we are worthy of understanding or validation. And beneath that desire lies insecurity, the belief that, without explanation, we might be judged, misunderstood, or rejected. This behavior frequently begins early in life. We are taught to justify ourselves to authority figures, parents, teachers, coaches. We learn to associate explanation with safety, the hope that if we can make someone understand, we'll avoid punishment or conflict. But as adults, especially in personal and professional environments, this pattern can become self-sabotaging. Excessive explaining weakens the impact of your voice. The more you try to justify a decision, the more it can sound like doubt. Think about the difference between saying, "I've decided to move on from this project," and saying, "Well, I just felt like maybe it wasn't the right time, and I hope that's okay. I didn't mean to disappoint anyone." The first communicates confidence and direction. The second invites questions, challenges, and often disapproval. People tend to follow those who seem sure of themselves, not those who seem to be asking for permission. What's more, explaining often assumes others have a right to judge your decisions, when in many cases, they do not. Not everyone deserves an explanation, and not every decision requires justification. There is strength in drawing a boundary that says, "This is what I've chosen. That is enough." When you constantly explain, you're putting your internal compass up for negotiation. You're opening the door for others to question your motives, reshape your direction, or even manipulate your uncertainty. There is also a time cost to constant explaining. It delays action. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of needing consensus before moving forward. In leadership, this is especially dangerous. Leaders who over-explain appear unsure, lose authority, and invite resistance. It's not that you should be closed off. Clarity is important, but there's a crucial difference between being transparent and being defensive. Explaining can often cross that line. Moreover, over-explaining can create emotional dependency. You start to believe that your worth is tied to being understood, that if people don't get you, your actions lose their value. But the truth is, not everyone will understand you. Not everyone needs to. And those who demand explanations may not always be seeking understanding. Sometimes, they're just seeking control. Learning to resist the urge to explain everything is not about arrogance. It's about owning your choices. It's about trusting that your values and reasoning don't need external validation to be legitimate. In a culture that prizes constant commentary, instant reactions, and public expression, silence is often misunderstood. It's mistaken for weakness, avoidance, or indifference. But true silence, the kind that comes from inner stability and self-control, is one of the most powerful tools a person can possess. It reflects confidence, clarity, and the mastery of one's emotions. Silence doesn't mean passivity. It means choosing when, where and whether something deserves your voice. It means knowing that not every insult demands a defense, not every rumor requires a rebuttal, and not every question deserves an answer. In a noisy world, silence is intentional, a way of saying, "I will not be drawn into drama, nor will I devalue my energy by pouring it into meaningless conflict." Those who are truly strong do not need to prove their strength through words. They do not rush to defend every decision or explain away every move. They understand that silence can command more respect than shouting, and that restraint often holds more impact than reaction. It shows you are not easily provoked, not governed by impulse, and not threatened by misunderstanding. Consider the power dynamics in any interaction. The person who speaks less often controls the tone and pace of the conversation. They are observed more closely, their words carry more weight, and their presence tends to feel more deliberate. Silence creates space. Space to think, space to listen, and space to disarm those who expect argument. It is especially disorienting to those who thrive on chaos or emotional volatility. When you choose silence instead of retaliation, you withhold what they crave: your attention, your reaction, your energy. Moreover, silence can be a form of dignity. There are moments in life when defending yourself is not only unnecessary, but also demeaning. When responding to gossip, criticism, or cheap shots only drags you down to the level of the aggressor. In those moments, silence is not about giving up. It's about rising above. It's about saying, I will not justify myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. From a psychological perspective, silence also supports clarity. It allows time for emotional regulation, to process thoughts before speaking, to act from intention rather than reaction. When people speak from a place of hurt or anger, they often say things they later regret. Silence offers space to cool the fire before it burns bridges. It's a conscious pause that reflects maturity and wisdom. Leaders, thinkers, and those who leave lasting influence often cultivate silence as a discipline. They listen more than they speak. They wait before they react. They allow their presence and decisions to speak for themselves. This is not a lack of communication. It is a refinement of it. Silence in this context is not absence. It is presence, sharpened and focused. Every day, each of us wakes up with a limited amount of mental, emotional, and physical energy. Like a bank account, it can be spent, invested, wasted, or drained. Unlike time, which moves forward whether we use it well or not, energy fluctuates depending on how we use it. And yet most people go through life unconsciously spending their energy on things that neither matter nor serve them in the long term. Complaining and explaining are two of the most energy-draining habits we engage in, often without realizing the cost. They may seem like small expressions, just words, just conversations, but every time you dwell in negativity or overextend yourself trying to be understood, you're depleting your reserves. You're giving away a piece of your focus, your peace, your composure. And the problem is, the things we give energy to tend to grow in significance, even if they don't deserve to. Think about how much energy it takes to rehash the same frustration with different people, telling the same story of being wronged, misunderstood, or disappointed. Every retelling reopens the emotional wound, re-triggers the frustration, and keeps you stuck in the same mental loop. Now multiply that by weeks, months, or even years, and imagine what could have been built, created, or healed if that same energy had been directed elsewhere. Similarly, explaining yourself to others, especially when it's not necessary, can become an exhausting performance. You start to monitor how you're perceived, tailor your decisions to avoid judgment, and constantly revise your words to be more palatable. Over time, you feel stretched thin, emotionally overdrawn. You may even start to lose sight of your original intention because so much effort is going into managing other people's reactions. Energy is not infinite. Once it's spent for the day, you operate in deficit, feeling tired, unmotivated, easily irritated, and more importantly, wasted energy can't be reclaimed. The time and strength spent on proving yourself to people who will never understand you could have gone towards something constructive: your goals, your relationships, your growth, your peace. People who understand the value of their energy become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. They learn to ask, does this deserve my reaction? Will engaging with this make me better, stronger, or wiser? Is this worth the emotional cost? This kind of discipline transforms the way you move through life. You stop scattering your attention and start directing it like a laser. You become less reactive and more intentional. You no longer chase validation or revenge or clarity from others. You preserve your power instead. Conservation of energy is a mark of emotional intelligence. It means recognizing that some conversations are not worth having, some battles are not worth fighting, and some people are not worth chasing. It means understanding that your ability to stay calm, focused and grounded is a resource, one that must be guarded just as carefully as your time or money. In a world filled with noise, from social media commentary to constant chatter in our workplaces and homes, it's easy to become entangled in a web of words. We hear opinions, justifications, and promises constantly, yet at the end of the day, it's the tangible results that carry the most weight. Words can be manipulated, misunderstood or forgotten, but results concrete out. Comms stand as a testament to one's capability, intention, and vision. When we constantly explain ourselves or complain about our circumstances, we are trying to convey our worth or intentions through speech. We seek validation, understanding or approval, hoping our words will build a case for why we should be given space, or why we deserve something. But in truth, people don't always remember what you said. What they remember is what you've done, the impact you've made, the goals you've achieved, the change you've brought about. Actions are harder to dispute, and much harder to ignore. Consider someone who consistently talks about their said goals or plans, always discussing what they meant to do, but never actually following through. Over time, people start to tune them out. The words lose their power because there's no action to back them up. On the other hand, someone who quietly works toward their goals, who lets their results speak for them, often commands far more respect. Their work doesn't need explanation. It simply is. The results are the proof. This principle is especially vital in leadership. Leaders who talk a lot about their visions, strategies or promises, but fail to deliver often lose credibility. Their words become empty rhetoric, and over time, they erode trust. True leaders, however, let their actions do the talking. They show what's possible through their execution. They don't need to convince others of their competence because the results are visible. Whether it's in business, personal development, or any area of life, results provide the undeniable evidence that you are capable and that your efforts are worth following. The idea of results extends beyond just tangible achievements. It's also about the effect your actions have on others. Someone who brings about positive change, fosters trust, or inspires others to act, even without needing to explain their every move, creates an impact that's far more valuable than any amount of words could achieve. In relationships, in business, and in society at large, your results are the reflection of your character,